Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, this is the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and also available on all good podcast and digital audio platforms. I'm Alexander Leibner, and this is still November. It's edition 140. It's week 48 of 2023, but December is almost here, and I'm excited to be with you once more. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send through your questions, your comments, and your feedback to editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect on social media at Sandton Times or visit the website sandtontimes.co.za. And if you're listening live on Mix 93.8 and not on the podcast, well, you can use the WhatsApp line right now. It's open on 084 822 0938. That's 084 822 0938. A very special welcome to everyone listening in Greater Gauteng or wherever you are across South Africa or maybe somewhere else in the world. Well, welcome if you're on air. Why do we keep getting this wrong? Online or on air. Anywhere, anytime, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land. Oh, I think the end of the year is starting to kick in here. Vincenzo joining me once again behind the mixing desk. I can feel that end of year feeling. You know that feeling where it's like, I think it's now, we're done. I think we're done now. It's time for a break. But it is only the end of November. But December is around the corner. And I don't know if you're going on leave, if your leave starts on the 15th, a day early, now that we got that extra public holiday. But whenever it is, I hope it's a well-deserved break and you make the best of it. And I think we've got this show and next week's show. And then that's it. And then we'll see each other again in 2024. But let's not get there right now. We've got a packed hour ahead of us. And coming up on this week's show, after an exhilarating season of rugby this year, we're all left wanting, but fear not, more rugby is on its way. I catch up with the organisers of rugby's high-paced sevens format. Then he's garnered fans all over the world as he's navigated the unthinkable during his time on Australian Survivor. I sit down with reality TV royalty on the occasion of his new book. Stay tuned for this. And finally, are you a new parent or are you expecting? Well, a new ruling in South Africa's courts has changed the game when it comes to parental leave. This and more coming up shortly. I think we are well into the festive season, so let's get the hour started with an all-time favourite from last year, Rob Thomas and Small Town Christmas, right here on the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8.
Promote your brand. Advertise your business.
Our audience could be your next client. Contact the Sandton Times today.
Get ready to outshine summer with Virgin Active. Start with the month on us. Add on the freedom to move and gym at over 130 clubs with a premium membership. Score 40% off monthly fees and punch, run, lunge and swim your way to a stronger, happier you, wherever you are. Call 0860 Get Fit or visit your nearest club to get started. It's your time to shine. virginactive.co.za. T's and C's apply.
The latest news.
The biggest names.
The best destinations.
The hottest entertainment. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
This is the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and available on all good digital platforms wherever you are in the world, and we know you are all over the world. When we watch the analytics, we see you tuning in and checking in on the digital platforms, and that's fantastic. And if you're South African in 2023, well, you couldn't be happier or prouder of the Springboks, who walked away with a Webb Ellis Trophy and taking home the Rugby World Cup. And now there's this weird period that we're going through where we have to wait possibly till next year to watch rugby again, or don't quite know what to do with ourselves on weekends because is there any rugby to watch? Well, I'm happy to tell you as we kick off this week's show that there is some rugby to watch. It's actually happening in Dubai. It's the Emirates Dubai Sevens, as many people know. And I'm joined by Mathew Tait, Festival Director for Emirates Dubai Sevens. And Mathew, it's great to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, the Emirates Dubai Sevens is taking place from the 1st to the 3rd of December in Dubai. And I know South Africa will be back on the field to perform. But how are things looking, Mathew, in terms of the preparations for the Dubai Sevens?
Yeah, no, it's all going well at the moment. Certainly ramping up over the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's very much a kind of 12-month, 9-month process, really, in terms of planning the event. So as soon as last year's finished, we're straight into planning for this year's. But it's really into the delivery phase now. Rather helpfully, we've just had a storm in Dubai this morning, so just making sure that that everything is fine up at the stadium. But it's all good. We've got a week until we welcome all the World Series teams into Dubai, including South Africa, who won the men's competition last year, 2 years in a row that they've won it. So they could go for an unprecedented hat trick this year in Dubai. But there's lots of planning. We also with the World Series on our pitch one, but we're very much a kind of multi-sport music and entertainment festival. So the World Series sits at the centre of what we do, and we work very closely with World Rugby on delivering that. But we have 5 other invitational sports that take place across the same weekend. So we have our invitational rugby competition. So got 280 teams from 150 plus countries coming in. Cricket, netball, CrossFit, functional fitness, and then this year we've introduced paddle as our 5th sport. So alongside those that can kind of come down and take in the festivities, watch the world-class sport, take in the music, the headliners, the various different festival elements that we offer. We have over 5,500 invitational athletes taking part as well. So it really is a celebration of music, sport and entertainment in Dubai.
Well, it's certainly a packed weekend and certainly something there for everybody. But Mathew, as we talk about the Emirates Dubai Sevens, for those people who are not familiar with the format, who have never watched it before, who are not, been following it regularly, give me a brief overview or synopsis of how this differs to the traditional game of rugby.
Well, I guess the clue would be in the name initially, and that it's 7 players per team with 7-minute halves. It's full action, fast paced, loads of tries. It's very much the game of rugby stripped back to its rawest, purest form. There's less scrummaging and less line outs, which as a South African might not be too pleasing for you guys, but it's an opportunity to really for players to express themselves, take players on, put their skills under pressure. And there's a lot of the players that lit up the World Cup, particularly on the South African side. Look, Cheslin Colby, it's only a few years since he was out here dazzling everyone with his fast feet. So it is very much kind of a breeding ground for talent for a number of different countries that come out here. But we're very fortunate this year. The World Rugby's changed the format of the World Series, so it's dropped down to it's now 12 men's, 12 women's teams to create that gender parity, and they take part across all the events, which culminates in a series final in Madrid into 2024. But we're excited to kick off the 7th season and the start is a really exciting year for the sport with the Olympics obviously in Paris next year, 2024, which the Sevens format is an integral part of that.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, I think also part of the vibe and being at the event, so flying to Dubai, making a weekend of it, is also the colour and the fun that the fans bring. And I believe there's also a fancy dress theme for this year. Can you talk us through that? What is that going to look like?
Yeah, so we've got fancy dress theme has always been fancy dress has always been a key component of the event. As I say, it's very much a festival and a celebration of just everyone being together. So this year's theme is land and sea, with a bit of a nod to the fact that we've got COP28 in Dubai as well. I think it's also, anyone traveling into Dubai, you've got everything that Dubai has to offer, from the beaches, the desert safaris, the amazing hotels, the food, everything. And then tag on that a world-class sport and entertainment event. I think it's a pretty compelling argument to come and pay Dubai a visit across the 1st to the 3rd of December.
Well, certainly that. I mean, I think South Africans made an incredible effort to get to Paris, which comes with its own fun and games, Schengen visas, and obviously the cost of getting there and the accommodation, etc. Dubai seems like a slightly easier trip. Firstly, it's shorter to get there, and I think South Africans will probably find that it's probably easier to access as well. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to catch up with Mathew Tait, Festival Director of the Emirates Dubai Sevens, right after this.
The best of talk and music in 1 hour. This is the Sandton Times Hour. From Greater Sandton to the rest of the world. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
This is the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and available on all good digital audio platforms. If you've just joined me, I'm in conversation with Mathew Tait. He's the festival director of the Emirates Dubai Sevens, which is coming to Dubai from the 1st to the 3rd of December 2023. And as mentioned in the introduction initially, we've all been given a heavy dose of rugby this year, and now we're all trying to find our next chance to watch some rugby, and that is around the corner with the Emirates Dubai Sevens. Mathew, as we were chatting, you were talking about some of the additional things that are happening around the actual sport itself. You've also got a music festival that's happening around the event this year.
Yeah, so the music's kind of an integral part of the holistic offering across the weekend. So it's an event where there really is something for all. So alongside the sport and the kids zone, which we've invested a lot in this year, double the size was last year, we do have 4 music stages which are active across both the Friday, Saturday and Sunday, the 3 days of the event. And we're very fortunate this year to have 2 international headliners on our Frequency on 8 stage across the Saturday evening, and Becky Hill and MK, which I'm sure will entertain the audiences. And then on the Friday, DJ Luck and MC Neat. And on the Saturday afternoon, we have Artful Dodger. So those 2 artists, I'm sure will resonate with your audience of a certain age. But we're really looking forward to welcoming those artists, as well as a number of local DJs, local music artists across a variety of genres that to provide something for everyone and anyone.
Well, you did mention that paddle is doing a bit of a debut in terms of a tournament at the event this year. What was the thinking behind that, and what is that going to look like?
Yeah, it's paddle. I don't know whether it's the same in South Africa, but certainly in Dubai and the Middle East, paddle's one of, if not the fastest growing sport in this region. Every new club that comes up has got multiple paddle courts, new communities have got paddle courts. So for us, it was an opportunity to diversify our offering, engage with an audience that perhaps don't know about our event, welcome them down and get them to experience the Emirates Dubai Sevens. So we've got an invitational event this year, so 8 different categories across male and female of various different abilities. We have 5 paddle courts that kind of sit right in the centre of our festivals. While you might not be a professional athlete, you can experience what it's like to play in front of big crowds that we're going to entertain over that weekend. It's a shame I'll be busy, because I quite fancy throw my racket in the ring and taking part in that competition over the weekend.
Well, I think you got a good sense of what's going on, because it is a massive sport in South Africa. I mean, also the same story here. Every corner where there's a bit of square piece of land, they've put up padel courts. And I had a chance to recently play with one of our big healthcare providers. They invited me. I knew how to play squash. I didn't know what the rules were of paddle, and they kind of pieced it all together, and we managed to actually get a couple of games together. And it is a really tremendous game once you get the hang of it, and once you actually also unlearn your squash skills, because that could be a bit of a hazard in some instances, especially if you've got a good or strong backhand. But back to the Emirates Dubai Sevens, Mathew. If people want to come along, what's the best way of booking tickets? Is there sort of an overarching ticket that gives you access to everything, or do you have to kind of get different tickets for different festivals and different events? Give us a bit of insight into that.
No, so there's a variety of different ticket options and different price points as well. So we've got there's kids tickets for those kids under 10, a free entry, and 10 to 14 there's a kids price ticket, and then for anyone over the age of 15 we've got our general admission tickets, and then you can buy them as both days. So if you want to come the Saturday and the Sunday, or weekend tickets. I would say that the Friday is a free day. Historically, that's always been our free day, and we've got a number of different activities across that day this year, particularly our sports masterclasses. So trying to give kids and families an opportunity to engage with the various different sports and the ambassadors that we have in town for that. If general admission is not for you, then there's a reserved seating option, slightly more premium seating experience within the facility, and then we have hospitality on offer as well across the 2 days, which is free flow food and drink, entertainment, access to North Stand with kind of the best viewing experience in the house. And to find those options, it's DubaiRugby7s.com, and all those ticketing options are available on there. And so there's a range of options depending on budgets and preferences.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to put all those details up on the Sandton Times website as well. So if you didn't get all the information or you can't remember it by the time this show is over, go onto the website. We'll put it under the show notes. You'll be able to see exactly where to go, what to do, where to click, and get all that information. There's still enough time to make a plan to get to the Emirates Dubai Sevens. And Mathew Tait, he's the festival director. He's been chatting to me about this event. And Mathew, thank you so much for making the time to be on the Sandton Times Hour.
No, absolute pleasure. And if you want a game in the paddle, let me know.
Well, listen, if you find yourself in Johannesburg or I find myself in Dubai, it is a game set, and I think we'll probably play quite well because it feels like we might be on a very similar sort of level in terms of getting this going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look forward to it.
Fantastic. Well, it's the bottom of the hour of the Sandton Times Hour. We're going to take a quick musical break and more of the show right after this.
For more?
The Sandton Times Hour continues.
This is the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and available on all good digital audio platforms wherever you are in the world. And that was Gabri Ponte and One Solo with Shining, taking us into the second half of the hour. My name is Alexander Leipner, and you know how this works if you listen regularly and you heard something on the show that sounded interesting, that sounded like you wanted to get the details but you didn't. Well, you can hop onto the sandtontimes.co.za, get the show notes for this week, and we'll put up all the information on there. If it's a book you want to read, if it's a website address, any of those details, we'll put them up there, and you can find those in your own time during the week, which is always great. And also don't forget, you can follow the Sandton Times on social media at Sandton Times, whichever is your favorite platform. And also don't forget to use the hashtag Sandton Times Hour. Now, I'm particularly thrilled to be chatting to my next guest. He joins me all the way from Australia. He captivated audiences who are big Survivor fans, and I think he sort of permeated beyond the borders of Australian Survivor. But if you did watch Australian Survivor, not once, maybe twice, you would have caught a contestant. He was fondly named King George of Bankstown by his fans, I think also self-proclaimed, a character that absolutely shone on the show and managed to make his way through the most difficult situations. He's now releasing a book this week, and I'm thrilled to be joined by George Mladenov from Australia. And George, it's great to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you so much, Alex, and sending you big hugs and kisses from Bankstown. How are you?
George, I'm fantastic, and thank you so much. And George, knowing your strategic mind, I'm worried to take that compliment right off the bat.
No, look, I am so grateful for all of the South African fans of Survivor, and I am acutely aware of just how passionate everyone in South Africa is about Survivor, and more broadly, because I know that Australian Survivor is, I think, airing right now on DStv as well, in a few other countries in the region as well. So the fact that Survivor's made such an impact on the other side of the world and in the Southern Hemisphere is very pleasing, and really delighted to be doing my first South African interview in 3 years as well. So thank you for having me.
Tremendous. Well, I'm thrilled to have you on the show. And George, let's kick off with this entire Survivor section of your life, because you come from a legal background, you come from a political background. What drove you to enter a reality TV show like Survivor in Australia?
Well, when I reflect back, like, I'd watched probably the first 30 American seasons, like a lot of people around the world had. And when Australian Survivor got relaunched in 2016, that was the period of my life when I was the chief of staff to a member of the New South Wales Parliament. And I think I was just too busy in terms of my work life to just even think of applying. So long story short, I think I'd made a decision to kind of move from being a political staffer to the public sector, and I found a better work-life balance in my life. And then season 4 of Australian Survivor was on TV, and I just literally saw one of the ads that said apply, and I went, why haven't I done this yet? So I did, and then I suppose the rest of it is history. I mean, we did have the COVID pandemic in between, but it was just a dream come true as a Survivor fan, and then now my life's completely changed, and I couldn't be more thankful.
It's tremendous. And I mean, like I said, you really added a different flavor to the show. I mean, we'd seen a lot of notable contestants across the entire Survivor universe, starting in the United States and obviously spreading across the world. And there's some well-known names for those people who've watched the show ongoingly. But you just added a whole different layer of complexity and skill to the game. And I think what made your season so interesting was the fact that you'd had really gotten yourself into some really difficult positions. And when I say difficult, for the average Survivor player, you would say, well, you know what, this guy's not going to make it past the next tribal council. He's going to get voted out. There's no way that somebody who stands out that way or who said those things will ever move on. And somehow you always managed to manipulate or encourage or motivate the people at that tribal council to vote for everyone except yourself. How did you do that?
How did I do that? It's all in my book. So I think that is the whole like instigator of my book, because a lot of people have those questions. And the short answer is I went out there and I was myself. And very fortunately for me, it made very good TV and it kind of worked in that Survivor setting. But it worked in that Survivor setting and in the other TV shows that I've done as well here in Australia for a few reasons upon reflection. And I kind of delve into it in the various chapters in my book. So in terms of my kind of like personal context, the very boring side of me is I got admitted as a solicitor. I finished my law degree, but then I got snapped up by my old MP boss. And I started working in her office. And when you work in that political space, not just as a staffer, but I was active in a political party for over 10 years as well in Australia. I kind of learnt the machinations of politics and deal cutting and working out motivation and intention and priorities and things like that. But from a different perspective, I was involved in like a litany of kind of like community groups. I was the treasurer and vice president of a semi-professional soccer club for about 10 or 12 years as well. I was on the board of a licensed club. And I was, when you combine all of that kind of like life experience with my other side hustle and passion, which is poker, where you learn to back your instinct and your judgment and to take risks at the right time and to apply pressure, it all kind of turned into a very good Survivor game. And I do go into kind of like the various different kind of tactics you can take in different situations in my book. In terms of winning friends, in terms of manipulating people to steer in the right direction or to skew the odds in your favor. And what I enjoyed about the process of writing my book as well was it gave me the chance to kind of collate it all together in a cohesive way, which is entertaining, which is in a storytelling fashion, so it'll be easy to digest as well. But I want people to find their kind of like their loyal allies, to work out what is important in a situation and what isn't, to back themselves and their judgment, to work out the odds, and then to take risks. Because if you do all of that, not only, for me, was it an interesting Survivor season and a great game, and thank you for all your compliments as well. I really appreciate it. But like in every single setting in your life, in your local community, wherever you are in the world, and to all your listeners in South Africa as well, you will be able to make the most of every situation. And that's what my book is about, basically. It's sharing my knowledge through storytelling in an entertaining fashion to give people the tools that they need to skew the odds in their favor.
Well, let's get the name of the book there. It's called How to Win Friends and Manipulate People, a guidebook for getting your way.
Very original.
Yes, I was saying, a fun play on the Dale Carnegie How to Make Friends and Influence People, but a bit of a tongue-in-cheek title.
Yeah.
But, I mean, George, like you said, I mean, there's some really interesting skills, and for somebody who looks at it at face value, you might not see it immediately. But for you knew that every conversation and every engagement on the show was crafted. It wasn't just a coincidental, I've got some time to kill, let me chat to this person, or let me, share some food with this person. If you had to pull up an example of a situation where you tactically used some of the skills and some of the things that you illustrate in the book, what would one of those scenarios have been on Australian Survivor?
Well, I think the easiest kind of Survivor example to give, and this is the final chapter in my book in terms of glory or death of how I framed it, which is one of my kind of like Survivor catchphrases as well. It's that episode 7 Tribal Council, the one that everyone calls the best one ever in worldwide history. And that wasn't just kind of like a situation that evolved itself over the course of one night. It involved so many different moving pieces of the puzzle. And it involved me more than anything else doing 3 things. I worked out who my people were and why they mattered to me. And for everyone that was listening, they were Shani and Liz on that tribe. I also worked out very early on what someone like Geordie's motivation was in the game, and that was to redeem his flaws from his previous game, which was the fact that everyone thought he was in a man-only alliance, and people out there in the fan base and the community didn't like that. So I knew which lever to pull with Geordie, and then I knew also that someone like Simon wanted nothing more than to prove himself and then to be in control. And when I went through the kind of like the process in my mind, I also kind of reflected on, the benefits of being aggressive and applying maximum pressure in certain situations and then provoking reactions. And then you kind of see it all in that 42 minutes of television that they ended up showing on that tribal council, because just so much happened. And more than anything else, I backed myself and I believed in myself. And I believed that this was the right thing to do at the right time. And it just so happened to be through the kind of like Survivor TV show element that a few unexpected things happened. And then I took the bull by the horns, and I made it work for me. And sometimes that's just like the story of life. The person that takes their opportunities, that works out the best path forward in multiple different permutations, is the one that gets ahead. And every single kind of like little element that I've just kind of like really gone through quickly with you there is from like a different story or example in my life. And I go through it all in my book. And if you can kind of like work out all those kind of cascading number of factors, you can skew the odds in your favor. And in that kind of tribal council setting, I did it. And it was, it's fun watching it back. And everyone calls it the best tribal council ever in the world. And frankly, it was. And, I was delighted to do it.
Well, listen, I certainly got to a point on this, on 2 seasons where I said, well, if you get voted out, I don't even know if it's worth watching the show anymore, because it was just so engaging and so entertaining. And I think at the same time, what also made you such a likable character on the show was the fact that you also owned your personality, and you were very confident, if not cocky, about some of the situations, to the point where some people might have said, you know what, this guy, I can't watch him anymore because he irritates me so much. And at the same time, you probably had people who said, listen, I have to carry on watching this because I love this guy so much.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it comes down to context and life and upbringing. And I think that kind of like directness, where I'm from in Western Sydney, that's kind of like very normal, where you take people at face value and you either like them or you don't. And it's that kind of dichotomy is something that I was used to being involved in the political scene as well. But I think South Africans in general have that kind of like frankness as well. And maybe that's why I've got like a much larger South African following than I would have thought, having been on an Australian TV show. But like what it all boils down to is kind of like understanding yourself. And again, sorry to keep saying it, this is also a chapter in my book. So if you can understand other people's perceptions of you, then that gives you a real kind of like advantage in terms of trying to work out their next steps. And people would always say it to me, whether I was out and about at functions or in the community or kind of like online on social media, why was George's plan the one that always worked? And why did people always go with George's plan? Because I always tried to predict the 2 or 3 things that people would do, and then I would always readjust my plan kind of around that. And when you have that kind of that self-perception element in terms of what other people are going to think about you in terms of predicting your behavior, but you're kind of doing it at the same time, and you test your assumptions and then you make calculated guesses, and then you keep readjusting in real time, things will more often than not go in your way. And that kind of like go-getting attitude is the difference in a situation where you can either strike a deal and it's successful, or you scrap that plan and then you move to plan B. And I was never afraid to do that on Survivor, but I suppose I do that in my life every single day. And it's just kind of like for the past 10 years, particularly in my professional life, before it kind of changed, and now I've kind of worked in the TV industry. But it's just like you're always trying to work out what makes people tick, and what their priorities and their motivations are, and what they're going to rally behind. Are they going to rally behind your flag or someone else's? And what I also did, particularly more so on my first season of Survivor, is I always had a kind of like us v them mentality, or red v blue, if you're going to use that kind of like political, analogy, where I found my people and that was enough. And then we have a different kind of like election system in terms of Australia, our Westminster system, but you don't need to. I always told myself I don't need to have the majority to be in control. I just need to have enough of a block of my own people, and then that's enough. And then if I can strike a deal with some of the other divided people, then that also will be enough. And it always kind of worked. Sometimes right at the last minute, sometimes it was risky, sometimes, things went my way, but that's life. And, that's having foresight. And the benefit of it is it made great TV, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
Absolutely. We had a lot of fun watching it. George Mladenov, also known as King George of Bankstown, famous for Australian Survivor. Now he has a book called How to Win Friends and Manipulate People, a guidebook for getting your way. Check it out this week as it gets released. George, it's been such a pleasure having you on the Sandton Times Hour, and thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really want to get out to South Africa soon, so maybe I can do it next year.
Well, listen, you're certainly up for a coffee, if not a tribal council with me. We'll definitely catch up when you're here. Please let me know. We're going to take a quick musical break and more of the Sandton Times Hour right after this.
What you are about to hear is the sound of me drowning. My name is Mathew. On 7th January 2023, a rip current swept me out to sea. NSRI's beach safety camera operators spotted me. They radioed local lifeguards and saved my life.
Drowning is swift and silent. Please, always watch your loved ones around water and help us keep saving lives like Matthew's at nsri.org.za/donate.
Follow the Sandton Times on social media.
Sandton Times.
This is the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and available on all good digital audio platforms wherever you are in the world. And that was Ed Sheeran and Elton John with Merry Christmas, a bit of Christmas music getting us ready for December and that break. And talking about breaks and talking about holidays, I mean, there's it's one of those things that you always look at when you planning your year ahead, and especially those people who are expecting kids as well. I mean, if you've got a little one on the way or about to give birth, it's those parental leave days are always up for dispute. And there was a recent court ruling around this. Let me not give you all the insights on this. I'm joined by Justin Blume. He's the candidate attorney at APA Africa. And Justin, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Justin, give us a bit of insight here. So, there was a recent decision by the South African High Court which challenged the traditional assumptions about parental roles and responsibilities. What was that all about?
In terms of the court ruling, the court took a look at the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, which provides parental leave to parents who have had children. It stipulates certain time periods that they can have leave. It does differentiate between the mother and the father. And it obviously guides them as to, one, how much leave they can have, when they can take it, and certain other provisions such as being entitled to benefits that you would receive at the same time. And the court took a look at it. It was a decision that was brought to the court by a family, and the reasoning for the family approaching the court is actually very important to look at, because what it does is it shows an example of different parental structures and different family dynamics that are present in modern day family systems that maybe have come about in more recent times. In this specific situation, the father approached the court because he had to essentially ask for extended leave from his company in order to look after the child. And by doing so, although he was granted that leave by his employer, he wasn't entitled to the benefits such as the UIF contributions. And the reason why he needed this leave, this extended leave, was that because in his family structure, the mom actually was a successful business owner / manager of two very successful companies, and she was the primary breadwinner for the family. She brought in the income that the family needed to support their day-to-day. it wasn't the father who brought the money into the system, into the family. And therefore, he thought that he needed to be there at home looking after the child, but he wasn't entitled to that leave and he wasn't entitled to the benefits and the UIF contribution. So he found himself in a situation where his wife was afforded that leave, naturally, as the mother. She was afforded her maternity leave in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, but he wasn't, and he had to make alternative provisions. And essentially he brought it to the court's attention on the basis that it was contrary to the constitutional rights of not being discriminated based on your gender.
So just to understand this in simple terms as well, is that up until now, mothers have generally gotten more leave or have been given the primary leave, and fathers have been given, I think it's about 10 days or something. And now this ruling is looking to sort of balance that out and say, irrespective of if you're the father or the mother or what your role is in this entire family structure, you should be given equal leave because you have to conduct certain responsibilities to look after this child.
Exactly that. The structure as it currently is, it may have been a bit more relevant in past times, but in the modern day system, in the modern day family structure, it would be unfair to, put a blanket provisions in terms of legislation across all families. So yes, it is exactly that. Mothers were afforded 4 months, generally taken about 1 month before dates of expected birth, with 3 months thereafter. There's an express provision that says there that a mother cannot work for 6 weeks after the dates of birth. And that's obviously something that's very important because that speaks to the recovery period of the mother. But thereafter, obviously after dates of birth, she gets 3 months in terms of the legislation, whereas the father gets only that 10 days.
So how does this now take effect? Because obviously it's not just specific to this family. It's specific now to anybody who's, or it applies to everybody who is in the working environment, who falls within the Basic Condition of Employment Act. Does this come into effect immediately? And what do you foresee being some of the challenges in terms of implementing such policies and also the impact this will have on organizations?
So no, this isn't an immediate change. In our structure, we have separate bodies. This is the judicial body, this is the courts, and although they make decisions based on certain things such as the constitutionality of provisions in other legislation, they cannot themselves change that legislation. So what the court does is it declares provisions, and what the court did in this instance is declared provisions of the legislation, for instance the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, to be unconstitutional, and thereafter affords the legislation, which is the body that's authorized to change law. It gives them a period in which they should reassess certain provisions of the legislation and make changes. And that's what's happened here. The courts made a very important assessment of the system and said, all right, well, the legislation says X. It says that women get 4 months and men don't. But it is not for the legislation to make that decision. And that was the very sort of the golden thread through this judgment by Roland Sutherland, who's our deputy judge president. And it was basically along the lines of, it should be the parents. It should be the parents who make that decision, how much time each parent should spend with the child in terms of their leave. It isn't a case of all mothers now must stay at home and look after the children for 4 months while the father, who may not be the breadwinner, is forced to go back to work. It should be the parents who make that decision, and that was the golden thread that went through this judgment of his. You asked about implications. As I say, it will naturally ask the legislation to relook at it and say, all right, are there changes that need to be made? Can we make these changes? How do we make these changes? And it's for them to then assess secondary implications, i.e., how does it affect the UIF contributions? We obviously spoke about how when you are on maternity leave, you're entitled to a benefit, a UIF contribution for the fact that you are essentially unemployed for that period of time. To open up this door, the legislation have to look at it and say, all right, now we're saying that fathers should get that UIF for their period of time that they're on leave. So there obviously are knock-on effects, and it's for the legislation to look at those effects. The judge merely, suggested that, right, let's relook at it. Let's have a review of the system that we're currently faced with, because it's not in line with how the modern day family is structured.
So there you have it, some interesting developments there in the High Court with regards to leave, as we're all thinking about going on leave and taking leave. And this is a leave that probably happens any time of the year. But we got a legal opinion there. Justin Blume, candidate attorney at APA Africa. Thank you for making time to be on the Sandton Times Hour.
It's only a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And that's it for the Sandton Times Hour on Mix 93.8, and is always available as a podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you want to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za or get in touch on social media @Sandton Times and get onto the website sandtontimes.co.za. And as always, feel free to send through your questions, your comments, your feedback, your input using one of those channels. And as always, thank you to all my guests who made the time to be on the show this week. And Vincenzo, are you already into the panettone for Christmas? Where did you get that from? Family from Bologna sent you that. Okay, well, you better share some of that after the show as well, because it looks very good. Thank you to the Sandton Times team, as well as everyone at Mix 93.8. And thank you for listening. And let's connect again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.